Greetings, it's I, Tantus Van Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It's time to continue our discussion on the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition D&D. I was talking about DMing, and I had dived into building a multiverse and talking about the multiverse in general. Today I'm going to talk about the Astral Plane and the Ethereal Plane. Let's talk about the Astral Plane. Now, when you would go into the Astral Plane, it appears as gray and silverly, where there might be kind of motes of light, but it's sort of like silver sea, they almost refer to it, that seems to be both below you and above you at all times and sort of stretches on for all eternity. It's sort of just kind of wasteland in between the material plane and the outer planes. So that is where this exists in, so that you travel almost from the material plane to the outer plane through this astral space. Now, the kind of things you might find are there maybe these dried husks, which are really dead gods, or perhaps these kind of rocks and dirt that seem to float off into space. You may even find these kind of shimmering portals of color that seems to sort of exist throughout the area. Now, if someone should be living in this area, you do not age, you do not need to eat or breathe. An example of this would be the Githyanki that live there. Now, any race that does choose to live there, like the Githyanki, will oftentimes have bases on places like the material plane or one of the outer planes, because there they can send people, they can send their children there to age, to be born and age there, because otherwise they don't age within the astral plane. They don't at all. So it's a great way to send someone there in order to become an adult and then return to the astral plane in order to kind of add into their forces there. Now, this is a place that you can move through just thought, actually. So if you should ever get into combat there, you actually would have a speed of equal to 3 times your intelligence score. The smarter you are, the better you are to manipulate yourself in moving through this space. One of the common ways of getting there is astral projection through the spell. When you're doing this, you sort of enter your mind and your kind of spirit into this realm and start to explore it. The main reason behind this would be to check out and try to find the various portals to the outer plane which exist within the astral space. The advantage you have there whenever you are in the astral plane or in one of the outer planes if you've traveled there from astral projecting is that whatever form you have counts as physical in this space. I'm astral projecting into the astral plane. I'm physical there. I'm physical in the outer plane I visit to there. But should I die there? It is like you die in a dream almost. You don't actually die. You're not actually harmed. You're not in danger there. The only difference is you have the silver cord, which is sort of your attachment from your sort of astral form to your body. Should that be severed in some way, then you're in trouble, which the psychic winds or the Githyanki silver sword are the traditional ways that you could possibly get this to sever it, and it is your one lifeline back into the real world. So one of those things could possibly cause that and cause you some trouble. Now, that's the thing, this is an easier way possibly than finding a portal to explore, because you can find these sort of colored portals spread throughout the astral plane and use them to travel to the outer planes. It might be easier than going and finding a goddamn portal in your own world. This might be easier than, if you don't have plane shift or gate, this might be, again, an easier way of traveling there. And it's probably safer. You can't pick up anything that you got there, but if you're doing some kind of adventure that is related to going there in the first place, then, you just have to go there. Now, the colored portals are actually kind of color-coded. Each of them represents a different outer plane or the material plane that you could travel to from the astral plane when you're discovering it. If you're looking for a specific one to go in through, it would take you 1d4 times 10 hours of searching just to look for that one if you have no idea where to look for. If I'm just like sort of random chance exploring around, it's going to take me that long. Between 10 to 40 hours. On the other hand, you might know exactly where you're looking for, then it is a little easier to go find that colored portal to the outer plane that you're searching for. You could also go there directly, though. You could also travel directly to the plane. If I would use like plane shift to go to the astral plane, then those same portals will take me to the outer planes. Just the same. I would travel just the same there. The advantage of using a portal or using a spell in order to go to the astral plane, because there are some portals on the material plane that will go to the astral plane too, is that I don't have this silver cord and I would not have that vulnerability there. Of course, if I die, then I've actually plane shifted or I actually portaled there, so I have that part of the disadvantage. Now, the psychic wind, which I mentioned, is actually this kind of phenomena that exists there. That's this manifestation of, like, forgotten thoughts, of lost memories, of, like, subliminal fears that sort of manifests from all the beings there and comes together in this flagellation that sort of exists as this almost storm. So it's not like an actual wind, it's this sort of mental effect. And you can actually see it a little bit when it's traveling. The sky will darken around you. The silver spee will darken around you when you know it's approaching, so you have a little bit of time to react to it, and then it will go black, like depths of a moonless night when you sort of get hit by it. The thing is, there's two effects if you get hit by it. There's a location effect just for being within the psychic wind, and there's a possible mental effect. The mental effect, you have to roll a DC 15 intelligence save. If you make it, you're okay. If you fail it, you're hit by the mental effect. Now, there's two charts. You would roll a d20 for each of those, for whichever one you're affected by. You roll a d20 for the location effect, regardless, and see what it does. You'd roll a d20 for the mental effect to see if it hits you for what it does, and you see the results of the psychic wind upon you. Some of these might cause you to travel various places, push you around. They could cause you some damage. Things like that in nature that you're just going to see what it's going to do. It could shove you through one of the random portals. It could just dump you out of the astral plane, too. Now, the kind of encounters you're going to find on the astral plane are more than likely something like the Githyanki. Of course, you could find them there. You might also find outer beings like celestials or fiends or something like that that are traveling using the astral plane to travel either to another outer plane or even the material plane and go through there. You might encounter them too. Those are the kind of things you'll encounter there. Now let's talk about the ethereal plane, because the ethereal plane is almost this kind of foggy kind of realm that kind of is covered in this mist that everything seems to be kind of unusual, and this represents a connection between the material and the inner planes. Every place in the material plane, every place in the inner planes, they're all reflected within the ethereal plane. There's sort of two versions of the ethereal plane. There's the border, which when you're in the border, you're on the border of one of these planes, of the material plane, of the Feywild, of one of the inner planes. You're at the border of one of these places and sort of peering kind of partially into these realms, and then you're in the deep ethereal plane, which is sort of the transition in the middle of all of these that sort of connects them all. When you're in the border, you can see about 60 feet in front of you because of the kind of misty nature of the place. If you're in the deep, only 30. Now, different spells allow you to go into this place. Now, you could have a spell that allows you to peer into the ethereal plane, but etherealness, you travel into the border. If you would use something like plane shift, you could go into the border or the deep. It's your choice. Now, when you're on one of these borders, you can actually view into the material plane. Effectively, you can see sort of about 30 feet of, like, around you and wherever you're peering into from the border. Like creatures that have, they will often have special lenses to look inside. You could use magic to look either direction, look at either side, but you really can't interfere with each other necessarily. If something exists within both planes, they could interfere with both sides, something like a ghost, or could peer in through both sides, they can do that. But otherwise, you just don't connect. You can look at each other, but you cannot interfere. Everything that would appear on one of these planes you're viewing into kind of appears gray and muted. And in fact, like, there is no gravity in the ethereal plane, so you can just travel wherever you will, and you don't interfere with objects. Objects don't exactly exist to you. The things that would interfere with your travel in the ethereal sort of borders, moving through the plane where you can sort of see more of it, it's about, force effects stop you, and living creatures, actually. Living things act as a barrier within the ethereal plane. They exist there, but they don't exactly exist there because you can't technically interfere with them, but they form this border. So it's like you find an immovable, indestructible wall that you're hitting in this living creature. A little bit of interesting things going on with this existence here. But everything is sort of, you're looking into this gray, muted world that you're sort of like viewing in at this from this border. And of course, then you could, as I said, view back in there and sort of look into this gray, muted world and see what is there. Now, if you're in the deep ethereal plane, it's kind of just dark blackness, kind of this, gray that you're just traveling in between, that you will find these sort of shimmering curtains of color. Each of these shimmering curtains of color travels from the deep into one of these border places associated with one of the inner planes or the material planes or one of the echoes. So like Shadowfell or the Feywild. You will find a different curtain for each of these sort of in the deep that you'd have to travel in between and find one of them. Traditionally, if you're traveling in the deep ethereal plane, it takes you about a d10 times 10 hours to travel from one place to another, even though you're sort of traveling mentally. If you should get into combat there, just treat it as normal movement, anything like that. You're just sort of moving through the plane like normal. Now, a threat that you can find in the deep ethereal plane is an ether cyclone. An ether cyclone is sort of this kind of swirling vortex of energy within the ethereal plane that if you have like a 15 or higher perception, you can generally get a little bit of notice in it, and you could try to like leap into one of the curtains to try to get out of the way of it. Or you could try to withstand it, and then you will roll on a d20 chart and see it's going to basically interfere with you, throw you off somehow. Either it's just going to add some more time to your overall travels, or you could get unlucky and it could do things like throw you into one of the various boundary areas and like actually into that realm, or possibly even throw you into the Astral Plane. It can just toss you in some kind of direction. The cyclone, you sort of have to withstand it and see if you can get through it, and it generally just interferes with your travel should you encounter one. Now, for encounters, it depends on if you're at the border or the deep. If you're on the border, you're generally going to encounter things that could either be there checking things out, or things that can exist between the two of them, like a phase spider or a ghost. A ghost is in the physical and the ethereal at the same time most of the time, so you can just find it there. Something that could peer into it very well. You can encounter in the border, especially if it's something in the nature of that area. In the deep, you're going to find things that are traveling in between it. Something that might be related to one of these planes, like an elemental perhaps, or you could even find something like celestials or fiends that are using the deep ethereal plane to travel in between them. Any kind of travelers you're often going to encounter there if you're finding anything. So that's it for today. I talked about the astral plane, the sort of gray, silvery, dreamlike area that exists in between the material and the outer planes, and then the ethereal plane, the sort of thing that shadows all the other echoes, the material plane and the inner planes, and actually is kind of on the border between them and exists connecting all of them. And the next one, I'm going to talk about Shadowfell and the Feywild, going into the echoes of material plane. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some more support, check out my Patreon linked in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.